real quick, Cycle 3, Week 18, artist Jim Davis. And we're talking about cartoons or emphasis on storytelling. So we're doing a couple of panels to tell a story visually. So visually communicating a story. And so things that you might want to talk about with your class, and I'll have some examples I'll show you here, is talking about how to tell that story visually, so simplifying images and having a little bit of change in each window to be able to tell that story, that the reader, whoever's looking at it, will be able to tell what's going on in the story. And then how we read comics, so conversation bubbles for adding a little bit of text or adding in sound effects, which don't need a conversation bubble. I'll show you these examples. But you really want them to emphasize or think about how to tell a story just by the pictures, with just a little bit of text, and then using tools like motion lines and emphasizing certain personality things of a character by exaggerating features or whatnot. So first I'll just show you a couple examples in Garfield. So we can see, just even looking at, here's our conversation bubbles. So we read those, the top one down or left, right, whatever is kind of higher is the person that's talking first. And then things that are thought and not spoken have these little bubbles that kind of helps you understand a little bit more like the flow of what's going on. But also point out how like the subtle things that we're looking for visually, like the expressions, like the big eyes on these characters and this kind of subtle smile on Garfield. But then when we get here, his kind of like bugging out eyes and what's happening there. And then this motion down here, and you can see that the tool that there's to show motion, there's multiple drawings of his arm to show that that's moving up and down really fast within that frame here. And then here we have the exaggerated mouth expression and outstretched hands. Obviously he's begging, and then these little like exaggerated little motion lines coming off of his body, and then like the exaggerated drooping here. So things that visually tell us more about what's going on than just the words. Let's look at another example. Oh, this one's kind of fun, but there's all these hands around here to show that he's very quickly tying the string around this box. But telling a little bit in each of these windows of what's happening, but the reader has to pay attention to the details, you know, like subtly pushing down on her head there, and that obviously that cat must be in the box here, and that cat's being shipped off here with his sly smile. But the reader has to pay attention from one frame to the next to see what's happening to understand the story. Let's see, one more thing in Garfield. Oh, just like on this one, his body motion, so moving forward and walking, but even looking at this cartoon character here with his exaggerated feet, these are obviously out of proportion to the rest of Garfield's body, but his simplified lines, so his kind of body is kind of a roundish shape, roundish head, round eyes, but generally flat fields of color here with just a little bit of details to tell us that, you know, it's a specific character. But even looking at motion, and so that, you know, one leg forward, one leg back to show us that he's running, and his arms are to the side when he's running instead of hanging straight down. So thinking about how we move or how an animal might move when you're drawing them to be able to give the idea of the motion or what you're trying to tell the story of. And that not everything needs words to it, that we can just look at the picture to pick up on what's happening in the story. Okay, so that's Garfield. Another example is that I just picked up from the library is the Peanuts. And these ones are really nice for showing really simple drawings. These are just black and white line drawings, but here's another example of some, you know, sounds that are outside of the word bubbles, of the conversation bubbles, just showing, you know, sounds to what's going on. And then here's a couple examples I'll have all on one page. But so here in 4 frames or 4 windows, we see the story. And so you can see these straight lines coming out from behind the dog that show that the dog's moving really fast, and now they're curving up a little bit, even though the body of the dog hasn't really changed position a lot, but just showing that he's jumping. And then he's now flat, straight lines. And we have to pay attention to the lines here show us that it's on ice. So now he's sliding on ice, and then those sound effect lines and how they are changed in size to kind of emphasize that sound that's happening and then moving, and then looking even at his expression of just the eyebrows jumped up, his ears are up to show us that he's kind of falling down. In this one, you know, obviously just paying attention to the expression, like his little tongue hanging out here, subtle smile. And then again, we see multiple kind of layers of him showing us that he's moving back and forth really fast. And so there's just multiple of the same image in this one window to show that motion, and then just that subtle humor there. And this one is a good example too of having to pay attention to those subtle things. So, okay, little kid, the fan, the thought bubble, just a question mark, sound effect, motion lines, so the fan is obviously on, and then showing here that motion of sitting straight up and down, so we're paying attention to that, and now he's leaning really hard, and then the subtle thing here of just not even saying it with words, we're just visually getting what's happening with the story of her pushing the little knob there, the little toggle switch, turning it off, and now because he was leaning so hard, falling over. Here's one more example that I'll do with the youngers of working on drawing this circle ball, and then I'll show you this of how to draw the dog. And then here's another example, maybe older kids might want to try this one, of the little boy running, kicking the ball, and then kind of the unexpected happening, and that's what makes it kind of funny. Okay, so, but for the actual drawing, so I just divided the paper into 4 frames. Maybe you want to have your students copy one of these examples just for, you know, for the sake of time, and also for not having to have them try and figure something out in their head within that time, but to be able to just work on this grammar a little bit, and that they are getting those tools so that they could work out their own storyline or come up with their own characters at home to figure it out more. So I just wanted to show you that, you know, I'm just simplifying this already very simple drawing to draw the dog, of just doing an oval shape for the body and just a almost oval circle shape for the head, and drawing those curved lines and just connecting those with curved lines for the neck, straight lines, curved lines to get those. And then I would go back in and erase, you know, where those lines overlap. To finish that off, to get that idea of Snoopy there. And so I'll just do that example again over here, just starting with the body. This is kind of like we did Degas last year, where we looked at the mannequins and thinking about the torso shape is kind of a upside down triangle, and the oval of the head, and connecting those spaces with the curved lines, and being able to just kind of add in those little details of kneecaps over the rounded areas and shoulders and such to make it look more realistic, but getting the main contour lines and shapes in first. And so adding that kind of pointed shape in again, his nose and his mouth and the ear, and connecting that, and straight legs, and kind of curving them up to there, and that overlapping of his other foot being behind. And of course the tail. Okay, but you know, and then the eye on there, and I could adjust this so it's not so mouse-like maybe. And some motion lines in there, the balls moving back and forth a little bit to give us that idea, and some grass down here. So then I would work through that with the students. We probably might just work on actually drawing just a dog and then just let them finish at home. But with older students, you could maybe work through 1 or 2 and then have them come up with their own, decide what happens in the last frame or add another frame. You could do 6 frames too, but that's where I would start for Jim Davis.